This is the Xpeng G9 Performance, and it's time for a revisit. Earlier I did a review of the pre-production version. This is the fully production version, and today it's time to test very important aspects like the charging capability, the charging curve, acceleration, cabin noise, range and consumption, and also Xpilot 2.5. Welcome to It's Only Electric. This is the things you need to know about the Xpeng G9. Let's start with some important facts. This is a full-size SUV measuring 4.9 meters in total length and has a wheelbase of 3 meters, weighs 2.3 tons, so it's a big and heavy car. All-wheel drive, so 2 motors, one at the front, one at the back, together delivering 550 horsepower and 717 Newton-meters of torque. Should be able to do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 3.9 seconds and has a top speed of 200 kilometers per hour. The performance version comes with the bigger rims, 21-inch wheels, multi-spoke design, more classical look, Michelin Pilot Sport tires with 255/45 all around, so not a staggered setup. So a very distinct looking frontal design called X-Bot design. X stands for the lines going through the front, shaped like an X. So a light bar crossing the whole front section, and the actual headlight units is placed down below. Bumper camera, in total 10 external cameras all around the car. Let's talk about one of the strong points of the G9, and that's the charging. So the DC charging, fast charging, is capable of charging the car from 10 up to 80% in only 20 minutes. And that's thanks to the 800 volt system that supports a peak power of up to 300 kilowatts. That's really fast. I'm gonna test that soon. When it comes to home charging, AC charging, 11 kilowatts, 3-phase support. It's not possible to open the charge port with your hands outside from the car, but there is a button for it on the key fob, and if you don't have the key fob, you have a function for it in your phone, because you can also use your phone as a Bluetooth key, exactly the same way as you do in your Tesla. Another way to open the charge port is from the screen inside of the car, and on top of that also with your voice. Whilst talking about charging, I think it's good to mention the range. The WLTP range of the performance version is 520 kilometers. If you get a non-performance version, you can get a range of up to 570 kilometers. It's enough of talking specifications. Let's start with a range and consumption test. So this is the first stretch of the range and consumption test for the Xpeng G9 Performance with a stated WLTP range of 520 kilometers, and that's with the current setup of 21-inch wheels and Michelin Pilot Sport tires, 255/45 all around. Current conditions, 3 degrees Celsius outside, totally dry roads and no specific wind to talk about, so good conditions, but still fairly cold, so consider this as a mild winter test. Still running on the summer tires though. Current consumption after 27 kilometers traveled is 21.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and I have just finalized the first stretch of 110 kilometers per hour. Now I'm driving in 80 kilometers per hour, so this is a slower stretch during this test. So just to set the scene and the rules about the test cycle. The test cycle is a test I always do with all the press cars I borrow, and it's an 80 kilometers long stretch with an average speed of 93 kilometers per hour. So the speed limits is set to between 50 all the way up to 110 kilometers per hour. Consider this as normal driving conditions, at least here in Scandinavia and north of Europe. I try to stick to certain rules. Rule number 1, always drive in eco mode. So the dry mode eco is active, also including the AC running on eco. AC set to auto and 20 degrees. And the last rule is always to stick to the current speed limits. And all those rules is to be able to create a as comparable result as possible. So let's continue and check back halfway in. So a pro tip for you guys, the Xpeng seems to be good at beeping and chiming, but there is settings for avoiding that. So my recommendation is every time you step into your car, first off, deactivate the overspeed alarm. And that's the EU regulated new law, goes for all vehicles from 2024 and onwards. And that one actually beeps if you go a bit too quick, like 2 kilometers over the current speed limit. That gets very annoying fast. The good thing is that NIO actually have provided a shortcut for doing that. So the only thing you do is to swipe down from the top of the screen, and there is an overspeed alarm shortcut for turning that off. So that's the first thing. The second thing I do is to go to the vehicle settings and turn off the driver status monitor, because that's also very annoying. I don't mind the messages on the screen at all, but I don't like the sounds all the time. So what I do is to turn that off, otherwise it will sound like this.
Please pay attention to road conditions.
Yeah, so it always tells you to pay attention to the road conditions, like it's, I don't know, something special happening on the road. But it's a bit too sensitive, so it reminds you very often, and the volume is fairly high, so I also recommend you to turn that off. Of course, if you feel drowsy or tired, please keep it on. So just past the halfway, this is the second status update. We have traveled 41 kilometers. Average consumption until now is 20.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. So the consumption has been going down since the last update. Just a brief comment on the noise level, the cabin noise level of the Xpeng G9. It's fairly silent in here, and it's a comfortable car to ride in. Doesn't have any double paned or acoustic glass windows, not in the front or nor in the back, but still feels like it's silent in here. The soundproofing seems to be decent, and it's not leaking in that much of a road noise either. So it's a silent car. I think this will be interesting to compare to the other cars in the same segment. For instance, the NIO EL or ES7, that's also a big SUV. That one may be a bit more silent than this one, but this is comfortable and it feels good. So stay tuned for my real measurement of that one to see how silent it is compared to other cars. So just finalized the range and consumption test. The average consumption during the whole trip ended at 20.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer. And that actually equals 462 kilometers on a full charge. And that's 88% of the stated WLTP range of 520 kilometers. I think that's a good range given the cold conditions outside. And I would expect some higher range during better conditions like 20-25 degrees of Celsius. You will probably be able to achieve the WLTP range or at least 500 kilometers, and that's good for such a big car. It's time to move on and look at the acceleration test. This car should be able to do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 3.9 seconds. It is a bit cold outside, so let's see what we can achieve. Okay, let's do the first test, 0 to 100. Cold outside, 1 degrees, 88% state of charge. Go. Really good grip this time.
0 to 60 miles per hour time 3.87 seconds. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time 4.06 seconds.
Okay, so specified time is 3.9 seconds. First attempt, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 4.07 seconds. So very close to the specified time. It's cold outside, so I think the tires need some warm up. Let's do that again. Okay, so time for the second attempt. Still 88% state of charge. Go.
Zero to 60 miles per hour time 3.81 seconds. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time 4 seconds.
Okay, so 4 seconds flat this time. 0 to 60, 3.81. Let's do a third attempt. Go.
0 to 60 miles per hour time 3.84 seconds. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour time 4.03 seconds.
Okay, so 4 seconds again. I think this is it. It doesn't get better at this weather conditions. I think it's a bit too cold. but still I don't feel any wheel spin. So the grip seems to be fine and the car seems to be able to balance the torque from the both motors in a very good way. After 5 tries, the best possible time I achieved was 4 seconds flat in 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. And that's not with a 1-foot rollout, that's a straight 0 to 100 time. 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.81 seconds. This is a really good score. I mean, given the conditions, it's dry outside, but still 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. It's a bit too cold for the tires to be able to heat up. So I needed to heat the tires a bit and also the battery pack to be able to achieve that numbers. But I think it's really stable and it delivers really good. And I'm impressed by the way it drives. I mean, the way the 2 motors work together. It's more rear-wheel drive biased and adds power to the front wheels, but in a very well-balanced and stable way. Never feels unsecure, and the front motor helps pulling you forward whilst the rear motor really pushes you. So it's still more rear-wheel drive biased and it feels really secure to drive the car. I have tried cars with a bit too much front wheel power and that ruins the driving dynamics a bit. Not in this case. I mean, Xpeng has really done a great job combining the 2 motors and how they work together. Let's move on to check the noise. Let's look at the cabin noise results. I always measure cabin noise the same way, drive the exact same stretches of the road, exact same speeds and during the same conditions. So I measure noise in 4 different speeds, 50, 70, 90 and 110 kilometers per hour, and this is the result. And by its own, it may not say that much. And compared to other cars, this is the most silent SUV I have ever tested, and it's the second most silent car I have tested in total. The most silent car that actually beats this one is the Neo ET7, and that's a big sedan, so that's a total different game. This is a SUV, and this is even more silent than the Mercedes EQS sedan. That's really impressive and not what I expected. The only SUV that comes close to this one in cabin noise currently is the Neo EL7, Neo's big premium SUV. But this is more silent. And that's really impressive. I mean, they have done a great job creating a silent car, and to be able to beat manufacturers like Mercedes, BMW, etc. is really impressive. I didn't expect that. And that's without acoustic glass windows. So let's look at the charging. This is one of the most exciting aspects of the G9. On paper, it's a hero when it comes to charging. I mean, 800 volt support with a top peak power of 300 kilowatts. So I took the car to a hypercharger supporting 300 kilowatts and 800 volts, and no one else was charging at that place. So the peak power I achieved was 268 kilowatts, and that was around 17, 18, 19% before it started to taper a bit. And what I did to create the best possible charging session was to preheat the battery. There is a manual setting for activating preheating when you navigate to a set destination of a charger. Then it preheats the battery. You can also preheat the battery via the mobile app. So really good functionality, and I drove around the car, preheated the battery. So I think the battery was hot enough to get the best possible charging speeds. So top charging speed I achieved 270 kilowatts. So the first step of tapering downwards was around 18% when it went from 268 down to 230 and up to 250. It alternated in that area up to 35-40%. And then it went down to 250 kilowatts of charging speed, all the way up to 57% before the next level of tapering. And between 58 and 70% of state of charge, it kept a speed between 190 and 200 kilowatts, closer to 200. And it actually kept 200 kilowatts of charging speed all the way up to 70%. So the slowest charge speed all the way up to 70% was 190 kilowatts. So from 70%, it tapered to the next level, and that's 180 kilowatts. So then I charged it to 80%, and it kept that speed all the way until it stopped. So at 80%, it still charges at 180 kilowatts. That's really impressive. So the total charge time from 13 all the way up to 80% in one go. Took 19 minutes and 40 seconds. That's really good. I mean, maybe not optimal conditions, so it's probably possible to get a bit better charge speeds in better conditions. But I mean, I'm really impressed. This is one of the quickest cars I have ever charged and tested so far. So really impressive. If you want a car that charges quick, this may be the one for you. But keep in mind, this is on a 800 volt charger. So if you charge it on a 400 volt charger, you will not be able to achieve those speeds. Then you should probably expect speeds around 150 kilowatts as a peak charge power. So the Xpilot 2.5 is the latest version currently available in Europe, and that's limited due to hardware. I mean, there is some missing hardware compared to the cars that's shipped within Asia. For instance, this one doesn't have a LiDAR, so you have radar and USS sensors and cameras that you rely on for the Xpilot 2.5. So it's a bit limited compared to the newer versions in Asia, but that's partly due to missing hardware, and secondly due to legal rights around Europe. It's a bit harder to sell full self-driving cars here in Europe. And of course, Xpeng want to keep the prices as low as possible to introduce the car in the best way. So now you activate the Xpilot by double tapping the gear selector, the lever to the right, exactly the same way as you do with a Tesla, if you have tried that before. And now it activates it, and you heard the sound for it. And now it keeps me in the lane, and I have tried it for a while now, and it seems to be staying good just in the center of the lane without ping-ponging that much between the two sides of the lane. So that's really good. Feels stable, and it seems to stay fairly centralized within the lane. Sometimes my Model Y tend to stay a bit too close to the midsection of the road. This one seems to stay a bit more in the center. One cool feature that's extra on a Tesla, that's part of the enhanced autopilot, that's the auto lane change. So for instance, when I turn on the turn signal to the left, it actually shows me a spot to the left where it moves to, and I just hold the steering wheel all the time, and that's the final signal for the lane change. Let's go back to the right lane again. I'm holding the steering wheel, and it by itself changes and gives me the signal sound for finalizing the lane change. And the Xpilot is still active after changing the lane. And this is a really convenient feature, and it seems to work good. And as all lane changing features on all other brands, it takes some time. It is not as swift as doing it manually. It takes some time, and if there is cars too close behind you or in the front, it will wait until the opening is big enough and safe enough for changing the lane. So if you drive in dense traffic or have too much aggressive drivers around you, I will not recommend you to use the lane change, because it will never happen. I mean, it takes too long time, and it's too defensive to be able to carry it out. And there you have the lane switch affirmative signal. I mean, that's totally unnecessary, because I'm not an idiot. I clearly see that we have changed the lanes and everything looks fine. So I don't really need, and I don't really understand why Xpeng keeps implementing the beeping sounds. This case is totally unnecessary. At least let me turn off that sound. Maybe there is one function for that, but I haven't found it yet. It's a bit hard to find all the settings in the menus. If you know anything about that, please let me know in the comments below. Maybe there is a way. When it comes to more complex conditions, like smaller roads with lower speeds and lane merges and lane dismerges, it's a bit more nervous. For instance, when a lane is too wide, it has a hard time choosing or picking a spot to keep to. It keeps searching for a position and sometimes get a bit too aggressive and nervous and turns off itself. So there seems to be conditions that's a bit harder for the Xpilot to be able to handle. I know Tesla Autopilot is able to handle some of those cases, not all. So in those conditions, really not on par with Tesla Autopilot yet, but not far from, I will say. And in some conditions, it's even better. So this is a scenario where it gets confused after the stoplight here. Let's see if it stops. Now it's red. Yeah, and it asks me to change the speed because the speed limit changes, and I can confirm that by long pressing the gear selector. Now it gets a bit confused and stressed. It's very wide here, and it seems to struggle to find the right position in the lane. So this is a bit scary. This is really not good handling. Did you see that? Not perfect. Now it stays in the middle of two lanes. Yeah, and now it corrected that. So as you see, not perfect. That specific part is a bit strange, and it's a bit complicated. I get that, and I guess that goes for most of the autopilot systems. Let's try this part again and see, because this is a part, just a random small way. Currently is 50 as a speed limit. It will decrease to 30, and it will ask me if I want to decrease the speed to the updated and changed speed limit. It can also do that automatically. So now it changes to 30, and then I need to confirm the new speed, and then it slows down 30. So that function it's possible to deactivate, and you can tell the car to change the speed automatically depending on the change of the road speeds. So let's move on. So let's activate that function again. So now it's going to change the speed automatically. So it's going to change from 30 to 50 very soon. So let's see if it can handle that without any interventions by me. Yeah, so now the speed changed. It gave me a message, a signal, and it increases the speed to the correct speed limit. That works really good actually. So the Xpilot 2.5 seems to be able to handle most of the scenarios in a good way. It has a bit harder to adapt and adjust to lane merges and lane submerges. But I mean, that's problems that exists for other systems too. I mean, I have that on my Model Y too in certain conditions. Also goes for NIO's autopilot system. So in some cases it struggles, but in most of the cases, and especially on motorways and highways in higher speeds and more regular conditions, it seems to be able to handle the conditions in a very good way. And it's really a good solution for that kind of driving. I mean, the purpose of the Xpilot is not to use it on small roads in that complicated situations. The main purpose is to use it to be more relaxed on long trips on highways. So that's it. I hope this video was fruitful for you and that I could provide you some great information about the Xpeng G9 Performance. If you want to know more about the car, watch my previous review I did. I put the link up here. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. That will help me to create more content like this for you guys. And as I always say, stay electric. Thank you for watching. Speak to you soon.